Well, the Tampa Bay Rays lose their third game in a row at the hands of the Baltimore Orioles by a score of 8-6. We'll get into that, some mailbag questions, and much more. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss, alongside Ulises Sambrano, who is not on this episode today. And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays. We're also on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays. And email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. Well, unfortunately, the Tampa Bay Rays lose to the rising Baltimore Orioles by a score of 8-6. Tyler Glasnow, no bueno in his start, especially against lefties versus the Orioles. Dug into an early 4-0 hole, which became a 6-0 hole, and then a 7-0 hole, which credit to the Rays for at least trying, battling, and bouncing back. It was just a case of too little, too late from the likes of Francisco Mejia, Wander Franco, Isaac Paredes, Yandy Diaz, Manny Margot. I will say one thing that really stood out on the offensive side of things from the Rays was Wander Franco taking a 95-mile-per-hour fastball way up in the zone, like had to be close to 8 to 10 inches above the zone, and he pushes it the other way. Really, really impressive stuff. But what wasn't so impressive, of course, was the outing of Tyler Glasnow, who is still trying to get back into a groove and find his footing, find his mechanics, find his velocity. And the Orioles just pounced on him early and never let up from there. It's interesting, at least in this game, it may not make a huge difference in this series because it's a 2-game series versus a 3-game series or a 4-game series. But I don't think that the Orioles were expecting or wanting to have to use Cano and Bautista at the back end of their bullpen in this game. You would think that, man, we're up 4-0, then 6-0, then 7-0 relatively early on. We can just cruise and give our high leverage late inning relievers a rest. And that was not the case. But I don't know if that impacts or affects their availability for this afternoon game to wrap up the series against the Rays. So it remains to be seen with that. But yep, the Rays lose 8-6. Again, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to freak out. It is unfortunate that the Rays are on a 3-game losing streak, but as we often say, it is a marathon, not a sprint. The Rays are in, mile 12-ish of a 26.2 marathon. There's going to be ups and downs and ebbs and flows. I try to keep a level head and a modest approach to all this. I would much rather the Rays have, hit a wall towards the All-Star break middle of the season versus in August, September, going into October. That's just my personal opinion. Another thing about this game, man, I must have been so out of the loop with baseball transactions and comings and goings because I did not realize that the Orioles acquired Aaron Hicks from the Yankees after the Yankees dumped him off, and he is really having a resurgence and new life, if you will, with the Orioles. And it makes sense. I mean, not very many guys can handle the pressure and the environment of the Yankee media market in that organization, in the fan base. And once the fans turn on you, it's hard to get them back and gain their trust. So it was just probably a bad situation for all sides. And Aaron Hicks is probably extremely, extremely appreciative to be in the Orioles organization and vice versa. The Orioles get a guy that has some experience and veteranship under his belt. And I think that's a key component to lead these young guns through what they hope is a playoff run. So he was, as I mentioned, one of the several lefties that did damage against Tyler Glasnow, whether it was an up and in fastball or a hanging breaking ball that was just could not get anything going. So we'll see if the Rays can bounce back. It'll be Taj Bradley going up against Tyler Wells in this afternoon game. And we mentioned on the other day's episode how the Orioles bullpen just has some monsters, basically basketball players with Bautista and Cano. Well, they're going to be throwing out another one, evidently, with Tyler Wells, who is 6'8". I would like to see him side by side with Tyler Glasnow, see who's taller, see who's lying by an inch or two. But he has been extremely, extremely productive this season, and it just seems as he has gone along in his 3-year career that he's figuring things out and getting better and more refined. He's essentially a 5-pitch pitcher, believe it or not. He's got the fastball, the changeup, the cutter, the slider, the curveball, really good mix of balance, of strikeouts, and not really walking anybody. And this year compared to last year, he's been emphasizing or de-emphasizing the fastball and the cutter less, and the changeup and slider more. So hopefully the Rays can figure something out against him, try to pounce on him early, get an early lead for Taj Bradley, and open up the sales from there. So we will see. But again, not freaking out. I expected going into the season, after even when the Rays were 13-0 and on pace to go 162-0, that at some point there will be a 2-game losing streak, a 3-game losing streak, a 4-game losing streak, maybe a 5-game and a 6-game losing streak. You just don't know. And coming back from the West Coast, having a day off, it can make for difficult circumstances as well. All right, we have more to get to, but first we have to tell you all about something extremely important, and that is Game Time. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will actually credit you 110% of the difference. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you are all set. Then tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through that email of yours. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute ticket deals, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, so we have that out of the way. Now let's get into a couple of mailbag questions that were sent to us recently. This first one from Parker Spence. Parker, thank you for reaching out to us. We always appreciate it. He says, or she, I don't know. I feel at this point it's clear that Vidal Brujan is not a major league hitter. While he is good defensively, I find it hard to believe nobody in the minor leagues could fill his role on the big league club. Question: what do you think the Rays could get for Vidal Brujan on the trade market? Would the Rays have to package him along with other prospects to get a reliever that they need? All right, Parker, we appreciate the question, and I think you pretty much answered it there. Vidal Brujan, his value and equity and interest is certainly not as high as when he was a top-rated prospect a year and a half, 2, 3 years ago. him getting his multiple taste of big league action has kind of shown that maybe he's not as good as what the prospect rankings indicated. And I think it's a case of if you try to call up a team and say, hey, we'll offer you Vidal Brujan, what can you give us? I don't think it's going to be a very appealing or appetizing return. So I think in that case, the Rays absolutely would have to package him with a prospect or two or him and another big league player. I just think that's what it's going to have to take to get a somewhat quality reliever that the Rays and the fan base would be interested in. I think the issue with Vidal Brujan, while he's served a role since Brandon Lau has been injured, and we know that he can play around the diamond and be a defensive replacement of sorts of, hey, we need you at second base. Okay, got it. We need you in right field. Okay, got it. We need you at short. Okay, got it. We need you at third base. Okay, got it. That is important and it plays a role, but he certainly has not proven or developed to be the everyday top of the order hitter with on base skills in speed to burn. I mean, he's got speed to burn, but it just is not translating into the highest level of the sport. So, I did look this up. His value, for whatever it's worth, on MLBTradeValues.com is, I think the median rating or score was 1.8, which again isn't very much, isn't very high. And I've said this about Vidal Brujan, and I think, we can kind of see the writing on the wall with him because even since he's been called up in the absence of Brandon Lau, he has not gotten many plate appearances or at bats or meaningful action. I mean, I think in the entire month of June, we're now getting into the very late portion of the month here. He's got like 13 at bats, and I don't know if he's qualified for an at bat in like 10 or 11 days. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but he's definitely not getting the reps that a young player, quite frankly, needs. And I suppose that the Rays just don't trust him to produce offensively at this level yet. Anyway, and I've said this. I think that if he can't hack it, like what we've seen from him is he can't drive fastballs. He's missing on off speed and breaking balls. And when he does make contact, when he does connect, he's essentially ground chuck. He just drives the ball, and drive is a pretty strong word. He places the ball into the ground. And his hits, I mean, Ulises kind of mentioned this, not directly toward Vidal Brujan on yesterday's show, but when Vidal Brujan makes contact and it goes to a first baseman or a third baseman, and the first or third baseman bobbles a relatively routine play, Vidal Brujan is getting merited with a hit where really it should have been an error on the fielder. I think there's been multiple incidents of that this season. So can't even really get the ball out of the infield. So I'm like, hey, you should just be learning to sacrifice bunt or lay one down each and every time or most of the time and try to get on base that way. And if his base stealing capabilities were up to par, you'd really be able to leverage and utilize that. But I don't know if the Rays have done that so far this season, even with all the rules changes that are going in favor of base runners. So that's a concern as well. So that's just my 2 cents on Vidal Brujan. I mean, his value is probably about as low as it can be. And I would imagine if and when Brandon Lau is ready to come back, that leaves Brujan in limbo mode. They're going to have to send him down or trade him or figure out something else with him. And I do agree that it might get to a point where you want to give Aranda or somebody else in the minor leagues a shot and an opportunity. The trouble with that, though, is you also want them to get and have plenty of playing time. And I don't know if this roster is constructed to give a young prospect like that plenty of playing time. So, because ultimately you're trying to win games, and this team has legitimate World Series aspirations, and it's not just about, hey, let's call up the next wave of prospects. Like, you're in win now mode. And so that's a delicate balancing act for sure. So great question from Parker. Really curious to see how the trade deadline will pan out and if Vidal Brujan is no longer in the Rays organization come July 31st. That's something to think about. All right, this next mailbag question is from Preston. He says, hey guys, first off, thanks for doing the show. Been following along all season. We appreciate that. A few baseball pet peeves got to be, and he's hearkening back to the baseball pet peeve episode and mentions that we've had. One, booing at the pitcher throwing over to keep the runner on. Two, I kind of hate that third strike in the dirt / throw runner out at first rule. I'm sure it's there for a reason I don't understand. Three, the complaint that nobody watches baseball, but yet we have all these paywalls surrounding the game, teams in your region, etc. I understand there's a lot of hands in the pot, and some of the minutia makes a little sense as far as people getting paid, but making it complicated for the customers who are trying to give you money seems counterintuitive. Pet peeves aside, this team right now is so exciting to watch, and it's a hell of a time to be alive right now in Tampa Bay. Thanks again, guys. Yeah, well, Preston, we appreciate the email and the mention and the shout out, and really good points there on the pet peeves. I guess I'll address number 3 mainly is, yeah, this idea that nobody cares or watches baseball is a total myth. I mean, if we're comparing it to the NFL or the NBA, sure, to some extent, but if nobody cared about or was watching the games or wasn't buying memorabilia or wasn't in tune to their respective team or the sport as a whole, then explain to me how uh, Aaron Judge and Bryce Harper and Corey Seager and Mike Trout and Giancarlo Stanton and Mookie Betts and Manny Machado and literally dozens of others are getting 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, $400 million contracts. I mean, baseball players are making more than any other athlete, more or less, in America. I mean, if we're talking just about salaries garnered or generated from the sport that they play, not off the field sponsorships and tie-ins with that. And yeah, I understand uh, with Preston's other point about making it a little bit easier to access games on television or via some sort of application. We've sort of seen the mechanics of that with Bally Sports allowing you to purchase a monthly or yearly membership so you can watch any and every Rays game, and you can watch it on delay or live. You have that option along with, I guess, hockey and basketball and some college sports as well. I think it's a little steep of a price, $20 a month, to basically just watch one baseball team if that's all you're going after. But there's that. I mean, the MLB has been really, as much, I guess, hate that goes towards MLB's way of, hey, they're not progressive and they're not innovative. I mean, as far as technology goes, they're kind of the leaders in the clubhouse as far as that's concerned when we're talking about StatCast and Baseball Savant and MLB TV and MLB Advanced Media. I mean, with their technological infrastructure, I mean, it's so good that NHL basically went into agreement to them of say, hey, your product, your software of MLB TV is so above par that we need this technology. We want to use it, and we'll have a 6-year contract with you to use this for our various platforms and initiatives. But what I would like to see, in a perfect world, because I think MLB TV is a wonderful application where you have the home and away television feeds, you have the home and away radio feeds, you can overlay the radio feed onto the television feed. You can pause and rewind and look at stats. And I would just like, I would like some sort of a la carte or upcharge option where, yeah, I know with the blackout restrictions and all that, you know, if you're living in the Tampa Bay area, you can't watch the Tampa Bay Rays on MLB TV, but that's ultimately what I'd like to do, and maybe pick, okay, here's the 1, 3, or 5 different teams that I want to be able to flip back and forth with on the application, as opposed to having to purchase the thing in its entirety to watch all 30 teams. Or really, at the end of the day, I just like to be able to access Rays games live via MLB TV, because right now I have the Bally Sports subscription, but it's not, you know, amazing by any means, because again, I sometimes like to overlay the radio feed onto the screen, and or maybe sometimes I like to check out what the away broadcasters have to say. And with MLB TV, I can do that. With Bally Sports, I can't do that. So I'd be willing to pay a little bit more to um, overshadow overshadow the blackout restriction to watch Rays games on MLB TV. And you know what? We might not be so far away from that with really, I guess, the bubble collapsing on Bally Sports and their parent company, and the bankruptcy that they're going through. I think there is going to be a time and a point where MLB might just take over the whole thing and not, outsource games to local television networks. So it's just something to think about. But yeah, I'm all in favor of trying to make baseball more accessible and easily watchable for all. It's huge for the younger audience, so they grow up being baseball fans. They watch with their friends and their family, and they become lifelong fans. So I think that's really critical and imperative. But yeah, I mean, I think that with the rules changes that baseball has made this year, previous years, and probably what they'll do going forward, it's going to endear themselves to new, younger audiences, and just people with the short attention spans. Because I was really getting frustrated at a point where it's like, man, I don't want to have to sit down and watch a game for 3 hours to 40 minutes, 3 hours and 40 minutes to see its conclusion. I'd much rather see all that um, condensed into 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours and 25 minutes. And, um, I think that's a big thing to watch going forward. So, all right. That'll do it for me on this episode. I'll be back with Ulises, or Ulises will be back with me later on this week. We may or may not have Evan Klosky from WTSP Channel 10 Tampa Bay on the show. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.